Hey YouTube, Twig here, bringing you all an update to my Exosister Yugioh deck profile for post the December 2022 ban list. With the ban list we got back in December, I figured the deck needed an update with some of the options we now have for how much of a banish focused deck this is. It just got even stronger with the use of cards like Dimensional Fissure and Macros Cosmos being more than just one of techs in the deck for you to use. And hopefully this deck can see some more competitive play. It did have some sort of a spark when Power of the Elements came out, with Martha Exosister being that much more of a better card for people to use in the deck. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. So for the Exosister monsters, we are running 3 copies of Exosister Martha. If you control no monsters or only Exceed monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand. If you do, special summon 1 Exosister Ellis from your deck, and you cannot special summon monsters for the rest of the turn or activate this effect except for Exosister monsters. If a card moves either to the graveyard, including during the damage step, you can special summon this card from the extra deck. 1 Exosister Exceed monster using this face-up card you control as material. This is treated as an Exceed summon, and you can only use each effect of Martha once per turn. So it's a pretty good card just for the overall setup that this card can provide. Being able to special summon this card from your hand onto the field, then special summoning Exosister Ellis from our deck onto the field as well to continue our plays for that setup with Ellis. And then also you're locked into Exosister monsters for the rest of the turn, but just being able to have the option of when a card moves out of the graveyard. So for that banish option as well, except during the damage step, to special summon using our Exosister Martha into another Exosister Exceed monster. I also run 3 copies of Exosister Ellis. If you control an Exosister monster, you can special summon this card from your hand. Then if you control Exosister Stella, gain 800 life points. If your opponent moves a card out of their graveyard, except during the damage step, you can special summon from your extra deck 1 Exosister Exceed monster using this face-up card you control as material, and it's treated as an Exceed summon. You can only use each effect of Ellis once per turn, but just being able to set up another monster thanks to Exosister Martha on the field gives you that access to 2 Exceed monsters, which then you can use those Exceed monsters once they're summoned out to then overlay into Exosister's Magnifica for that bigger boss monster summon. I also run, for the last of the 3 ofs, 3 copies of Exosister Stella. During your main phase, you can special summon 1 Exosister monster from your hand. Then if you control Exosister Ellis, you can gain 800 life points. If your opponent moves a card out of either graveyard except during the damage step, you can special summon 1 Exosister Exceed monster face up as you control as material using this card. You can only use each effect of Stella once per turn, but the same plays, but being able just to give you a special summon from the hand onto the field means that you can have a setup for another Exosister monster using this card from your hand onto the field and gaining the additional option of the special summon with an Exceed monster when your opponent moves a card out of their graveyard. For some of the lower numbers for the Exosister monsters, 2 Exosister Sophia. If you control another Exosister monster, you can draw 1 card. Then if you control Exosister Irene, you can gain 800 life points. If your opponent moves a card out of their graveyard, you're having the same Exceed play with Sophia, but just more of a draw power by just controlling another Exosister. You only use each effect once per turn. That's only why I'm running 2 Sophia, because once you get this card set up and ready to use, you just have a draw for you to use thanks to this card on the field. With the last of the Exosister monsters just being 1 Exosister Irene, the lineup for the Exosisters is pretty standard. So just 1 Irene, you can place 1 Exosister card from your hand on the bottom of the deck to draw 1 card. So it doesn't really give you a plus resource, but still relied on just for another Exosister target to summon out onto the field. And then for the other main deck monsters, 3 Dimension Shifter along with Macros Cosmos and Dimensional Fissure. Dimension Shifter just during the standby phase if there are no cards in your graveyard to shut down your opponent's entire graveyard. Really just affects so many decks in the current format, so you definitely want to run 3 of this. The same with Ash Blossom and Joy Spring. Even if you have access to not being able to send cards to the graveyard, it doesn't really matter with Ash Blossom because you can discard it and it can still get banished, and you can still resolve the effect to stop your opponent from either sending a card to the graveyard or adding a card from their deck to their hand. And that's it for the main deck monsters. Moving on now to the spells. I run 3 copies of Exosister packs during the main phase. Pay 800 life points to add 1 Exosister card from your deck to your hand, except for Exosister packs. Then if you added a monster by this effect, you can special summon it if other Exosister monsters mentioned in it are on your field or in your graveyard. So if you have access to any of the Exosisters, if you have your search be for Exosister Irene, all you have to do is control the other Exosister monster needed for the special summon, which is Exosister Sophia. Sophia needs needing your Exosister Irene, so you have both those cards covered, and then with Stella and Alice, and then Martha and Ellis for that search. I also run 2 copies of Exosister Armament. You pay 800 life points, target 1 Exosister monster you control, special summon 1 Exosister Xyz monster from your extra deck with a different name than the cards you control by using that target as material. It's treated as an Xyz summon, so you mostly use this card for a quick play Xyz play using the spell on the field with the resources you already have. So if you have some of your bigger monsters to rely on with your opponent, you can use those monsters with the different names from you control to go into some of the other monsters you may have with more material attached onto it because of this card. I also run 2 Dimensional Fisher. This card came off the list from 1 to 3, running 2 copies of it along with all the other banished cards like Dimension Shifter. I feel that's good enough for you to run just as a first turn setup, stopping any monsters of your opponents from going to their graveyard. And I also run 2 Pot of Prosperity, just another way to banish. We have multiple copies of a lot of the different Exosister monsters, so whatever you banish, you can at least get a search from the top of your deck using this card. If you don't have Pot of Prosperity, you can always take this out and put in Pot of Desires as a replacement, since we don't run full playsets of a lot of the Exosisters, but just a better chance to draw into something more usable. And then lastly, 1 Call by the Grave and 1 Harpy's Feather Duster for back row clearing of anything pesky our opponent may have, and more of the graveyard shutdown with our opponent. As for the traps, I run 3 copies of Exosister Returnia. If all monsters you control are Exosister monsters, minimum 1, you can pay 800 life, target 1 card your opponent controls are in their graveyard, banish it. Then you can apply one of the following effects. Immediately after this effect resolves, Xyz summon 1 Xyz monster Exosister using monsters you control, or if you Xyz summon this turn, banish 1 card your opponent controls. So if you did go for the Xyz play by just having an Exosister monster on the field, you just get a banish of one of your opponent's cards, but also being able to take a card out of their graveyard and banish it to activate this effect if all monsters you control are Exosisters, which will be the majority of the time. With the last of the traps for the Exosister lineup being 3 Exosister Vadis. You pay 800 life, choose 1 Exosister monster from your deck, then take 1 other Exosister monster from your deck that is mentioned on that monster and special summon both, but shuffle them into the deck during the end phase. Also for the rest of this turn, after this card resolves, you cannot special summon except by Exosister monsters. So if your opponent does banish with those monsters being on the field, you can just Xyz summon using them into those extra deck Exosister Xyz monsters and avoid them being shuffled back in, since they'll be completely different monsters. I also run the 2 Macros Cosmos just to go with the 2 Dimensional Fisher for more of a banish option. With this Dimension Shifter and Dimension Fisher, you have a good majority of cards that can just help with the overall banish play that the Exosisters are meant to do against your opponent. With the last of the traps being 3 Infinite Impermanence. I know it's a pretty heavy hand trap lineup in the deck, but they all work very, very well together with the rank 4 playstyle that just having 1 Exosister monster is meant to do. And moving on now to the extra deck, I run 3 copies of Exosister Michaelis. I would say one of the better Exosister monsters. It cannot be destroyed by battle with a monster special summon from the graveyard. You can only use each of the following effects of Michaelis once per turn. If you control this card that was Xyz summon, use this turn with an Exosister monster as material. Quick effect, you can target 1 card your opponent controls or in the graveyard and banish it, and you can detach 1 from this card to add 1 Exosister spell or trap from your deck to your hand. Having access to many of the different Exosister spell and traps we run in the deck along with these spells just makes it a great 3 of to go into. Plus, if we do use Prosperity as one of the banished targets, we'll still have 2 more to use. I also run 2 Exosister Magnifica for our bigger boss monster. It needs 2 rank 4 Exosister Xyz monsters. It must be Xyz summoned with the above materials. You can make this card have a second attack during each battle phase, and once per turn, you can detach 1 material from this card, banish 1 card your opponent controls, and when your opponent activates a card or effect, quick effect, you can return 1 Xyz monster you own attached to this card to the extra deck. Then you can special summon that monster from your extra deck by using it as you control as material, and it's treated as an Xyz summon, just going into a whole new monster after you've used up the first main effects of Magnifica. I also run 2 Exosister Gebrine, for this one being more of an attack boost with this card, and also with the option of it cannot be destroyed by activated effects of monster special summoned from the graveyard. And then also, if you control this card that was Xyz summoned using an Exosister monster, you can target 1 effect monster your opponent controls and negates effects until the end of this turn. So you have more setup thanks to the Gebrine, but I feel like we only need 2, just like the 2 Exosister Caspatel that we run, being able to add an Exosister monster from our deck to our hand, and also the 2 Exosister Sophiel for the play of being able to target a monster our opponent controls and return it to the hand. And then also, if it was Xyz summon using an Exosister monster, neither player can activate card or effects in the graveyard. So more of a shutdown Xyz monster also. And then for the last of the Xyz monsters, 1 Tornado Dragon and 1 Divine Arsenal Zeus. If you have Baguska, you can always put that in instead of the Tornado Dragon. It's just a player preference. difference, with the other monsters we run in the deck just being 2 Link monsters, Cross Sheep and Lena the Light Charmer, as just another option to use with our light attribute Exosister monsters to take our opponent's resources, and being able to use the Xyz play with our Cross Sheep to have all monsters our opponent control lose 700 attack as a way just to use our bigger boss monsters to be able to get over those monsters. And then as for some of the go-to plays, this is a very heavy control playstyle deck, so just setting up your Exosister monsters come down to a lot of the playstyles. If you get those 2 monsters on the field and your opponent activates and removes a card from the graveyard, you can just Xyz summon into those monsters on the field, giving you those resources, and then also the main focus to then go into your boss monster, which is your Exosister's Magnifica, giving that for the detach, then return that card that was on it to the extra deck to summon it back onto this card and complete the cycle of more detaching off of your Exosister monsters. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Like I said, I wanted to update it with the December 2022 ban list, and I was pretty happy with the results of it. Well, maybe we'll see some more Exosister support in the near future. I don't know if we can go any other direction aside from Xyz plays. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. And as always, until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and Kira Twig out.